Okay, cool stuff alert, cool stuff alert. If you like Warrior, you know that little show on Cinemax that's making a little bit of noise based on writings by Bruce Lee?
Think you can take me on?
That's the wrong question.
Oh yeah? What's the right one?
Right now, I've got one of its stars and he's gonna talk to me. Why me? I don't know, but he's gonna talk to me right now.
The right question is, do you really want to find out?
Here we go. Kung Fu Chronicles. It's a special episode today. I have Perry Young from Warrior, who is an actor. You've been acting for quite a bit, sir. Good. Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. How are you?
Hey, Quasi, thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
No, it's amazing, man. Thank you so much. I'm a huge Warrior fan, but I kind of wanted to open it up to people that weren't aware of your history. How long you been acting, and was that always your passion?
No, I mean, I've always been an artist. You know, I've always like grown up as a musician, artist, singing and choir and all that stuff. I'm, you know, in Oakland, California. And along the way, you know, like I remember Bruce Lee having a studio, his Kung Fu studio on Broadway near MacArthur.
Nice.
I was just born up the street from there, you know? So like, you know, a lot of my friends in Chinatown took Kung Fu lessons, you know, some with him and some with, you might know his famous nemesis, Jack Man Wong.
Yes, yeah, Wong Jack Man, yeah.
So Wong Jack Man, yeah. I actually studied with him as a child.
Oh, okay, so you did do some martial arts.
I wouldn't say I did it. I was too young. I just remember going because my brothers, you know, were signed up, and I would go, and I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time, and I was too young. I was not disciplined to stand there and do the, you know, horse stance and punch and everything.
Right.
And I just remember Wong Jack Man yelling at me all the time, you know. Like, I was too young, you know. And so I remember that, and then we started seeing, you know, the first hearing the first bits about Bruce Lee becoming well known in film, and you know, it was like the Chinese Connection, the Fist of Fury, and word got around like he teaches in Oakland, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And then I heard that our teacher had a match with him. You know, the famous match.
Big fight, the famous fight.
Yeah, and you know, this was later on when I really pieced it all together. Because at the time, it didn't really mean anything. We just heard there was a fight with our teacher and Bruce. You know, it didn't mean anything, just in the community. And later on, years later, you start reading about this infamous match, and you're like, wow, that was that. You know?
Wow.
I really don't know who won, that kind of stuff. We don't know anything about that. You know, it's myth, you know,
disputed so many ways. I know, and there's a book, everything. I know.
Exactly. And then I was mainly an artist and musician. Went to school, San Francisco State, got my fine art degree. But at the time, I was into performing, you know, doing performance art, experimental theater because of music. And suddenly I found myself acting when I moved to New York City. It just seemed like the natural progression. And in acting, people ask, you know, as an Asian man, I'm supposed to know Kung Fu or something.
Right.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
Exactly. It's like, why are you here, you know?
Either that or you're really good at math, right? One of the two.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't good at either, you know?
Okay, right.
I was that unmodeled minority that was not good at either, you know? And so I, you know, but I could fake it quite well, you know, because I had some understanding. I saw a lot of Kung Fu films. I was a fan of all the Run Run Shaw, Shaolin epics, you know, Golden Harvest.
Yes.
You know, I was a fan of all of those films. And so it was like in me. And I grew up watching Bruce Lee. He was my idol. He was the only reason I said, I can do that. Without him, I wouldn't have said, you know, there was no one in American media, Western media, doing what he was doing.
He took it to a different level. No dispute on that. Let me talk a little bit about, since you brought up your, you know, I bring up your acting, bring it full circle. You've done, you know, been in certain things for people that recognize you. I looked at your list, Blue Bloods, Gotham, Blacklist. One of the ones that I wanted to ask you about really quick before we get into Warrior was the Nick, because I used to watch that show and I was like, that's right. I forgot about the Wu character. I was like, that is you. And I rewatched a couple. I was like, that was you. I was like, wow, that was a cool show.
Oh, I love the Nick, and that was my first opportunity. Actually, my first experience with television and film. Like I had done a lot of theater, done a lot of theater and experimental theater in New York City. the kind that doesn't require a race, you know, like, you know, a lot of, you know, like dance, modern dance, you could be any color. You're just up there doing dance, you know, it doesn't matter what color you are. But when you start doing theater, it matters. The color of your skin starts to matter. Like, what character are you? I mean, like African Americans, Black people are way before Asians in terms of cast, non-traditional casting.
Because you're Black. You are.
African Americans can be cast as anyone these days, but still it's hard for Asians to be cast as anyone. We're still locked into the other, you know, the Fu Manchu, the evil Asian guy, or exotic martial artist monk or whatever from Asia. You know, we're still locked into those roles. It's a bigger pool these days. We can do more roles, but that still exists.
Better, but and then you still have Caucasians that are playing Asians, and it's kind of maddening still to see
still that. There. But beautiful thing about the Nick was, you know, like Steven just well, first of all, the casting director Carmen Cuba saw my tape, and Carmen's known for casting people who aren't famous. People who are just, you know, they need a way in maybe. So she sees that I hadn't done anything, but like, you know, I could do the role. So she sent me my tape into Steven Soderbergh, and Steven goes, "Oh, let's look at him again, give him a call back." So I did the call back, and I didn't hear anything for a couple of days, and I'm like, well, you know, it's one of those stories, you know, you do the audition, you call back. But it was my first audition, really, my first callback. So I was like, oh my God, you know.
That's
and then they called me, you know, 3 days later and said, Steven wants you.
Okay.
Holy shit, you know, we're just waiting for the studios. We're waiting for the studios to okay it.
Yeah.
So I thank Carmen Cuba for taking a chance on me, Steven Soderbergh for taking a chance on me. I had no credits for film and TV. But Steven was amazing. You know, he just looked at me, you know, when I auditioned for the role, it asked for a heavy accent because it takes place in 1900.
Right,
1900.
early,
So I possibly would have an accent. But as we were rehearsing and I'm talking to Steven about the blocking, where would I be for the light and the camera, he's just speaking as Perry. And then when they said, okay, let's do a take, action. And then I do the character and I have the accent.
You disturb me! You must have a key me!
Like, whoa, cut. Like, let's do it as Perry.
Okay. Right.
We don't need that accent. He was probably born in New York. You know, you could have been.
Yeah. And you're like, in that role, you're just very soft-spoken in it, but you're just a man of few words, but a lot of cool action in it, and very with it. And there was one of those moments where, as an Asian American actor, you're going, wow, this is that moment where they go, you don't need to do the accent. Yes.
And it was like, you know, the clouds parted and the angels sang. It was like a moment, you know.
Yeah, no, and it was really good to kind of wrap it up, because I know I was going to ask you about, because you obviously now you've broken through with, told me about your martial arts background a little bit. Wu had like that one scene where you had to go in and kind of like wreck shop.
Yeah.
Did you do all the stunts in that? I mean, it was a short scene, I remember, but it was.
I did the stunts, and actually I'm so sorry, I can't remember the fight choreographer's name. He worked with me just before we shot. You know, it's one of those things sometimes where it's like you just have to prepare and then see what happens on the set, you know? So you get to the set and the stuntman goes, well, what can you do? And I was like, well, you know, show me, you know, we talked about it. And he goes, okay, let's just do what Ping Wu would naturally do. Like, he's not a martial artist, but he's a badass motherfucker.
You're a bad motherfucker.
So you just do what you do, and then like we'll figure it out. And then you know, I had, you know, it was written with the two weapons, those sort of moon knives, and a chain mail. So you went there, and he goes, well, what would you do? And he basically was really great. He goes, oh, just do it the way you're gonna do it. Don't pretend you're a martial artist, because you're not that, and we don't want to see kung fu here. We want to see this dude that comes in and just rips shit apart, you know?
Right.
And so he goes, and you know, there's a moment where I kick the door open. He goes, don't do it like a kung fu guy. Just do it, you know, like, you know?
Yeah.
So it's more raw. So it's raw. It's not about kung fu. It's not about the genre. It's about who you are and what you're doing in that moment. And that was great. And you know, and I realized those are the people you want to work with.
It was great. So I commend you. I didn't know that was your first role, so thank you for letting me know. That's awesome. It's a little feather in my cap too.
Thanks.
Really quick, I'll roll it to back to Warrior while I'm really talking to you, which I love the show. Big fan, if you can't tell already.
I love that background.
But I'm a kung fu guy. I did martial arts for many years, so I'm really both into the movie side and both into the arts as practicing. But the show really just struck me from season one. I have one of those people that actually watch Cinemax, and I like those kind of shows like Strike Back, Banshee, all that stuff. But when we first started, I love the sense of history just from season one. Martial arts are amazing, but the sense of history that they give, the Exclusion Act and all things, those are things that I learned in school at least about. Later on, I read a little bit about, but it's really cool. And the way the show kind of mirrors today's topics and things that are obviously going on in the real world. I love that. Was that, when you first read the scripts, were you like, did that intrigue you also, or was that just kind of?
Oh my God, it was a dream. It was sent from heaven, that script. When I read it, it was like, so often, like you said, it's Hollywood's version. Think your story, it's the victor story, right? But here we're coming from Shannon Lee, Bruce Lee's daughter, who said, like, this is a story my dad wanted to tell. And it, like, all through episode one, when I read it, I was like, this is the story that Bruce wanted to tell. Everything about it was my history. When Assam gets off the boat, that's my great grandfather getting off the boat. To all those demonstrators screaming, "Go back to China!" We're
gonna take back our city.
That was my grandfather. That was my grandfather building the railroads. And that was my grandfather stuck in Chinatown. I mean, like, and there were no women around because of the the Chinese Exclusion Act. So none of the families of women were allowed because they didn't want Chinese to have to start families in America. As a result, I never met my grandmothers. I'm a product of all that history. And as I was reading it, I was like, I am so blessed to be here now, to get into this role. It's like, and Jonathan Tropper, the writer, and Justin Lin, the producer, they're all about Asian American identity and authenticity. And they know how to, they want to do Bruce right. And this is, again, a collaboration with Shannon. It's been 50 years in the making.
Right, because I saw the background on how she actually dug up the old writings and she gave it, like sent it in and it's like, hey, can you do anything with the script? And it's amazing what you guys have done. It's just such a great series.
Well, the history with David Carradine's Kung Fu. It's most likely taken from Bruce, because Bruce took that idea to the studios, and then the studio says, great, no thank you. And the next thing you know,
Chinese immigrant wanders the land. He's a good guy, a hero. Of course he's a hero. He's the star of the show.
It took 50 years to make this, so we're not going to screw it up.
No, and you guys have not. So season one was really more like Assam's kind of arc, coming in obviously to find his sister, Mei Ling, and that whole dynamic. And I kind of see the show in those eyes too. The action's amazing, but it's to me about those kind of family relationships. You got the brother-sister, but then also father-son with Father Jun and Young Jun. So this season, listen, I had a bunch of questions to ask you, but then episode 7 just came out. So I won't go crazy spoiler, but for people that have seen episode 7, they probably will watch this. Everything just changes. The dynamic totally changes with Father Jun. So I got to ask you just about that whole council scene when, obviously, the guys come back and you're just like, you got a lot of fucking explaining to do. Like, how intense was that filming that? And like, how long did it take? I mean...
We did what we did to save the Tong. Because if we keep doing things his way, the Long Zi and the Feng Hai will own us within a year.
That is singularly the most intense scene I've ever filmed in any film or television show.
Right.
A lot of it was because it took all day.
Right.
It took all day to film that scene. And then this, I was screaming a lot, all day. I started to lose my voice by the end of it, because it's take after take and you got to nail it. And you're wondering, you have to give it all you got, because this is it. This is that moment that the 2 seasons have built up to, what's going to happen, So we tried it in different ways. Obviously, as you shoot, you're going to try things differently to see how it reads on camera. And as you're trying it, you have to give it your full in order to know whether it's going to work or not. So I can't hold back on my voice. I can't hold back on my emotions, because you don't know if that particular camera, that particular setup, relationship's going to work until you do it live. So by the time the day was over, I had no voice, and emotionally I was wrecked, because every time they said action, I have to be again at my wit's end, you don't pretend that stuff, you know?
Yeah, and at that point, Father Jun is furious. He's just He's just ready. He's like, dude, he's like, it's like enough of this. He's like, obviously found out that they're doing their opium thing on the side. He's like totally pissed. Just like,
and I totally, and I could tell you, they didn't choose the scenes that really went out there, where Father Jun really went over the top and broke down and flipped out and seething and spit flying everywhere and all that stuff, you know? It was too much.
Scenes. deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, hopefully when they release it.
Somehow they had to like contain it, you know, so that it can go to the next scene.
Yeah, it was intense. I mean, you can see there's so many periods where it's like, people are gonna like this show for so many reasons. The action, of course, but I think the story and the drama sometimes is really, and the little subtleties, I really just have to say I appreciate the nods to the Bruce Lee homage. There's certain episodes that are named like Chinese Connection. There are obviously homages to like Enter the Dragon, the tournament episode with the Psalm with the you know Mark
6 episodes.
Yeah. That was by far my favorite so far this season.
Dustin Nguyen, the director, did from 21 Jump Street. I mean, he did an amazing job.
I was just gonna mention him, and he plays Zing from the Feng Hai, and it was great to see, great to see him acting. But then I also knew that he directed. I saw that. I was gonna ask you about it. Thank you. And it's great to see, because I'm an old school fan too. I liked him in 21 Jump Street. I knew he had martial arts skill, but I didn't know he directed as well. So that was.
But yeah, I really love what you're saying about like fans can be into the genre, the entertainment aspect of it. You know, the martial arts epic quality. And the drama, the writing, the story.
The build-up, because the father-son relationship, I really connect with that, because I grew up mostly with my dad. So it's like, I see the things that Father Jun's trying to impart in young Jun. He's like, you need a little more patience, you're too impetuous. But young Jun's like, no, we gotta do this. We don't just, it's like, come on, we're not gonna treat it like this. We're the best Tong, blah, blah. And Father's like, calm down. I got this.
My Ling's walking around like the motherfucking queen of Chinatown. The Feng Hai are all over us, which never would have happened if we hadn't bent over for it.
But this is my madness, but young Jun's always just like, so that brings a really quick question I just had to ask you, and it's never really said, but there's a scene that's like maybe it's episode 3, you're outside playing the flute, and I think Assam and Young Jun are leaving, and you're just you've already talked to Assam earlier when he was doing the stuff with the, the wooden dummy, and then you see them walk away, and it's kind of like, what are you guys up to? And they're looking like, okay, we'll see you later. At that point, do you think, or was it told to you, did Father Jun know something was up at that point? Because he had that look like, you guys are up to
Right. That's one of the great things about Jonathan Tropper, is like he dangles those things, but actually we don't know if the character knows.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but it's happens at a timely, perfectly timed moment where he might know, you know? And there are moments when the director directs like our looks at each other. At the end of that scene, I don't know if you remember, but Father Jun, there was a take where Father Jun looks at Assam after Young Jun leaves. And then there was a longer kind of a look, which would say that he knows.
Yeah.
But in the editing, they didn't keep it long at all. It might have been a quick one to say.
Very, very quick.
So those are one of those things where I would say that as someone who read the script and I make my choices as an actor, and I know that Jonathan left it to me, to say, you could possibly know that something's happening or not, We're not going to tell you. You can show us whether you know or not. It's one of those beautiful.
That's great. I love that you said that, because I'm a big, by the way, Jonathan Tropper fan. Banshee used to be my show, so I know his whole history. And by the way, that's the other subtlety. I don't know if people pick up on this. I think by now they have. So every episode has a title, and within the show, someone always says the title in the show. He carried that on from Banshee, and I picked that up, and I love that. So it's like someone will always say that. And this past one was so funny, because I love Yi, by the way, who plays Chow. He used to play Job and Banshee, and he has that scene with the Psalm where he does the, like my dad used to say, if you wait long enough by the water.
If you wait by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will come floating by.
And the Psalm's like, yeah, actually Sun Tzu said that. It's like, well, Dad said that too. Those little kind of subtle, like those humor points where it's like the writing's just so good.
It is so good, and it's all about like these characters are smart, you know, and they're smart in themselves. Whereas in sometimes when we say Hollywood films or Hollywood TV directors, and when they're directing and writing for Asians, when they're not coming from our perspective, the joke is usually the mainstream joke, But for us, it's our joke that you guys we're sharing with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
which is the great thing about Warrior.
I was going to ask you, since you said you have freedom with the script, do you guys have freedom to ad-lib a little bit at times? Are there certain things that you've ad-libbed? Like specifically with Father Jun, you have a trademark that is so great to me. I don't know if it was you. So every time Father Jun really gets, like he does his matter-of-fact thing, is such and such, you get me? And then everyone's like, I have a relative that used to be their trademark. You get me? And then we're like, we got it. It's like, was that your thing or was that written in the script?
They hate us because they fear us, and that fear is where we get our fucking edge. You get me?
That you get me is written because they wanted a quality of like a gangster, going back to the gangster films, like kind of Sopranos, like the language, they built Father Jun as like that world, as a gangster world with that language. But we do have a little leeway sometimes, and we'll have input and they'll say yes or no.
The other question I have, and I think it's kind of left up to the viewer also, Assam is kind of like Father Jun's thorn and has been from the first season, really. He's like, there's something about this guy. Yeah, he's good at fighting. My son likes him, but there's something I don't like. Like, do you think from the very beginning, Father Jun has always been suspect of Assam, or it's just something that's kind of, as things have evolved, it's just, I have to follow up to it, but you tell me that.
I think that Father Jun always is on the lookout for strong, talented martial artists, because they will, they're the great, they're muscle, for what he needs to do. There was a line in season 1 where it's like, we are the halfway to prevent, to stop the violence perpetuated upon our people from the ducks. That's why we do what we do. So he needs strong muscle for that, and he's always on the lookout for that. And but he also sees that Assam has some attitude, because in Chinese culture and Confucianism, there's hierarchies. If you don't bow down, which the first scene was like, he didn't bow to me.
Yes.
It's all about that. So if you don't bow, you don't show respect. That's the first thing that means you're out of line. Even though so I have to keep an eye on this guy.
Right. Because I was going to ask, my follow-up was that if he suspected him or like didn't feel that he was like a good egg, so to speak, why did he let him back in after he loses that fight in the first season?
Yeah. Again, Assam can kick ass, and we, basically that's what's about it. Assam is arrogant. He's an arrogant dude, and like we have.
Although losing that fight was a big deal, that lost the halfway a lot of they lost a lot with that. So
it totally did, but we saw at the beginning of season 2 where like, I didn't have a chance to connect with him. I don't know, but this is a spoiler. The moment with the dummy, I had to come back and say that we didn't follow up. We didn't like clear the air about this, but
yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna like let you back in unless you have a problem with my dominance, with my power. Right. Do we need to address that right now? We need to settle that. So but like he sees Assam as a very useful person, and Father Jun has to operate that way and use what's people for what they're good at.
For sure. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'll close kind of with this, because from season 1, Father Jun is always stepping into like as that final kind of nail, like, wait, whoa, we didn't do this. This is traditional. So I know you remember when you had that scene with Assam was like, you know what? I didn't do this right. I didn't initiate you. And you got that scene where you break out the tonfa, the crutch, and you put it down on him. Did you, was that all you two? Was that the stunt coordinators? Like, I know that he's definitely got some padding on as you're doing that, but just like, how does that kind of work?
Yeah, that was the same thing. When I said earlier that the episode 7 was the most difficult thing I've ever filmed, I would say that was second.
Okay.
Because of I had just flown in from New York to shoot that in Cape Town, so there was a 12-hour difference in time or something like. I think maybe it was 6-hour difference in time. So anyway, it would have been in the middle of the night, for me.
Right.
Yeah. And so like my brain was just not working. I was jet lagged, and there was like physical, and then I didn't have that particular tonfa weapon, which was a dummy weapon with a softer handle. And in the tonfa, the wooden one, you could actually swing quite nicely because the grip is slippery. Yep. You could swing it. With the dummy they made, there was a rubber grip, so it didn't swing. And so I was wrestling with the swinging, the lines. I'm jet lagged, and then after several takes, that rubber ripped some skin in my thumb. And so they had to constantly address the ripped skin. Is it bleeding? Is it showing on camera? That's getting in my way of like, the
swinging
zone of where, and like, so, but it's great. You get into the zone and like, the thing is you're doing it right. But the camera, Lonnie, the director, was great. He had this really sophisticated camera move that went in circles and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember. I love that. So it was like, we had to time it, everything I do. So I can't really change what I do, but the camera people have to sense what they're doing and time what they're filming, because that's the art for them. Capture the right composition with the right energy, with the right swing as it's happening. So we're repeating it over and over just for the cameras. Sometimes that happens. So you get tired and you're doing your job, but the camera people, because of whatever reasons, it takes 5 people on the camera. They're not all coordinated at the same time sometimes, just because one person's stepping wrong, or whatever. Like you got to do it again. It was a perfect take, but you got to do it again. I mean, it was,
Yeah, because it's intense, and you guys, you pull it off well, and it's just like, listen, you're gonna bow down. He's like, take your hand away. It's like, I know you can fight. You got to take this. You got to take this ass whooping.
That was another one of the scenes that took all night to film. It's like over 12 hours to film, and it's just, and you get tired,
Yeah, because you got to swing and make it look like you're really, hurting them.
Right. Yeah, and then your lines have to be fresh. It's like you said it for the first time and all this kind of stuff.
But as far as the future of the show goes, you any like inklings? HBO Max maybe trying to pick it up or anything for season 3 or?
Well, after this season ends on Cinemax, HBO Max will start to stream it. So it'll be available for people who are HBO subscribers to be able to watch it, which will open up the show to like, triple the audience or more, quadruple the audience. So all these people who will see it for the first time and go, why didn't I hear about this? Why didn't I know about it? So it would take that sort of big rush of energy and fans and hashtagging Warrior 3 HBO, please, that kind of stuff.
I'm going to do it, yes.
And we might get it. I mean, there's definitely a buzz about the show. All the articles are like reviews of the show has been amazing, and about the topical nature of the show, how it resonates today with all the political demagoguery, immigrant scapegoating, racism that's happening today. It's in the show right now, and so people like love it for that. In terms of what's coming up, I remember watching them film the last 3 episodes. I mean, I was, the show's so good. I would come to the set to watch.
I was going to ask that. Do you watch other scenes? But
yes, I come to watch on my days off, and like, I was watching them film some of the, the subject. I'm not going to give it away, but I was like, oh my God, this is going to be on TV.
Wow.
I've
read some, so I think I know what's coming, but yes.
It's like for Asian Americans, it's like when Alex Haley's Roots was first shown on TV. Yeah. They're showing this on TV. You know? That's what it felt like.
It's significant. I think it's broken some barriers and in a good way, and shown really Asian Americans in such great lights, and just it's done a lot. And of course, it's because of Bruce Lee's original writings, and it's come to fruition now. And thank you to Jonathan Tropper, Shannon Lee for first bringing it to the attention, and all this you guys. Really quick, I was going to ask about your musical background. You got your flutes in the background. I was going to ask about that. You would talk you were a musician, but you also build flutes as well?
Yeah. Along the way, like I mentioned before, as an actor, as a musician, I was basically a punk rock musician, guitar, But like, after I got into performing in New York City, I realized, as kind of a funny thing when people expect you to play, to know Kung Fu as an Asian. Yeah. I went, eventually I went, actually, I want to know an Asian, practice. Music, because I'm kind of whitewashed, Right. So I found this bamboo flute, the Chinese bamboo flute, then it went to the Japanese shakuhachi, and it changed my life. And it was like, wow, that's something that's to me directly into my DNA.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I thank you for taking the time out. Obviously, I'm a huge fan. I appreciate it. I'm going to definitely be watching the rest of the season. And really quick, let the people know that you have upcoming things that we should look out for you in.
I just did ADR for Eddie Huang's film Boogie. Yeah.
And then, of course, Warrior Season 3. Warrior season 3.
Let's do it. Let's do it, right? Let's do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, it was a pleasure, Quasi. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's right back at you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Warrior season 2 is on Cinemax every Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern, I believe, because it's 7 o'clock my time. I'm Pacific. Okay, great.
That's it.
Yes, yes, yes. Mr. Perry Young, what a guy, what a gentleman, what a scholar. Guys, do yourself a favor. Warrior, Cinemax, if you got it, check it out. You won't be disappointed. On demand, soon to be on HBO Max. Make sure you subscribe, like, share. Stay safe during the holidays. See you guys in the next round, Dan. Keep punching.